Earlier this month, the yacht of billionaire Mike Lynch was lost off the coast of Sicily, and back in 2022, the deepest shipwreck known to man was discovered, beating out the previous record holder by 1,441 feet. It's all here and more, so let's get into it. On Monday, August 18th, around 4 a.m., a fisherman witnessed a massive flare light up the night sky off the coast of Sicily. When he went out to see where the distress call was coming from, all he found were cushions and floating planks of wood. He later learned that the distress signal had come from the luxury Bayesian super yacht owned by British millionaire Mike Lynch, who was celebrating winning a 12-year legal battle in which he was accused of fraud. While it was initially believed that the yacht sank in a mere 16 minutes due to sudden bad weather, authorities have begun to think that there is more to the story, and furthermore, that foul play might be involved. Out of the 22 people aboard the vessel, 12 passengers and 10 crew were able to make it onto lifeboats and were later rescued by a nearby sailing boat. The remaining, including Mike Lynch and his lawyer, Chris Marvolia, along with Lynch's daughter Hannah, Ricardo Thomas, Morgan Stanley, and Jonathan Bloomer, perished in the wreck. The investigation of exactly why the ship went down and how it all happened so quickly is still ongoing. While some claim the ship's captain, James Cutfield, to have been driving recklessly at the time the ship sank, the trade union Nautilus, which represents seafarers and captains, said any attempt to question his conduct without the full facts is not only unfair, but also harmful to the process of uncovering the truth and learning any lessons from this tragedy. To make matters even more questionable, just days before the yacht disaster in Italy, Mike Lynch's co-defendant, Stephen Chamberlain, was killed after being hit by a car while running in Cambridgeshire. Officers are urging eyewitnesses to come forward in relation to the incident involving Chamberlain so that they may also determine whether or not foul play was involved in his death. As of right now, there are no plans for the two investigations to intertwine, but as new evidence comes to light, it's entirely possible that they will. In 2003, Ignitis Renewables, a branch of a Lithuanian state-run energy company, stumbled across a 230-foot-long, 20-foot-high shipwreck in waters where less than 20 shipwrecks have been officially registered, while scouting for a place to build their offshore wind farm that ideally would eventually be able to replace approximately 1/4 of Lithuania's electricity demand with green energy. The vessel was located 125 feet below the surface of the water in a portion of the Baltic Sea that had, until Ignitis Renewables came along, never really been studied. After the company published their findings, Lithuanian officials admitted that they had not been aware of the wreck prior to its recent discovery. The company then went on to confirm that no records of the sunken ship had previously been marked in any national databases. They also stated that further historical and archaeological research would be valuable for the country's scientific community and historians in regards to the wreck. Since the discovery, Ignitis Renewables has handed the investigation of the origins of the ship over to experts who will hopefully be able to provide some more details in the near future. In June of this year, 2024, researchers discovered a 3,300-year-old ship at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. The astonishing find was made 90 kilometers, approximately 56 miles from the shore, at a depth of 1.8 kilometers, about 1.1 miles. Aboard the ship were hundreds of intact jars or urns. The remains of the ancient vessel were found during an environmental survey of the seabed by a London-owned natural gas production company, the head of which, Karnat Bahartim, was quoted saying that during the survey, an unusual sight of what seemed to be a large cluster of urns was discovered, a sensational discovery more than any of us could have ever imagined, end quote. After the initial discovery, the urns were extracted from the wreck, which experts believe would have probably contained oil, wine, and other agricultural products like fruit, indicating that the passage of the ocean where the ship was found was likely used as a maritime trade route back in 1300 BC. As it is the first and earliest shipwreck discovered to date in the deep sea in the eastern Mediterranean, experts are hoping to learn much more about the vessel as the year unfolds. The SS Kamloops was a Canadian lake freighter that belonged to a fleet of Canadian steamship lines that launched back in the 1920s. It sank on December 6 of 1927 in Lake Superior off Isle Royale, Michigan. One person who managed to avoid going down with the ship, a young stewardess named Alice Bettridge, who later perished from exposure, wrote, "I am the last one left alive, freezing and starving to death on the Isle Royale in Lake Superior. I just want mom and dad to know my fate." The message was found the following year stuffed in a bottle. Many others did manage to make it to the shores of Isle Royale, but they all died shortly after, either due to hypothermia or wolf attacks. A number of others went down with the sinking ship, one of which remains to this day inside of the hull of the SS Kamloops, which has since its fall become quite a popular spot for experienced divers. Keyword being experienced, guys, this is a very difficult dive. Old Whitey is the name given to the corpse preserved by the cold temperatures of Lake Superior, which many divers have claimed to have seen following them around the hull of the ship. It's not just a ghost story though. Old Whitey is a real corpse located on the wreck, although he has become rather fragile over the years, and so it is unlikely he will last much longer. The Mars was in its heyday the largest and most powerful vessel in the world. It was a Swedish warship that ran and sank back in the 1500s. For more than 500 years, its location remained unknown until it was discovered back in 2011. During its time at sea, the vessel was equipped with a variety of weapons. I don't know why I did that. A variety of weapons, including cannons created by the melted remains of church bells that had been seized by Eric XIV in an effort to reduce the strength of the Catholic Church. This led to many people believing that the ship was cursed to sink, and as it turns out, those people were correct. Just 10 years after its maiden voyage, the ship went under during a battle with Danish forces, taking around 900 soldiers and a bounty of silver and gold coins along with it. After its rediscovery, the shipwreck became a pretty popular dive spot, with many divers who snuck pieces off the wreck and back up to the surface reporting to have been suddenly struck with a string of particularly bad luck. Today, the wreck remains located 75 meters, 246 feet beneath the surface of the ocean, around 22 kilometers, 14 miles off the coast of New East Åland. You can still visit, but I certainly don't recommend taking anything. The USS Samuel B. Roberts was a John C. Butler class destroyer escort for the United States Navy that was active during the Second World War. The ship went down on October 25th of 1944 after being hit by 3 shells fired from the Japanese battleship Congo, which tore a 12-mile, 40-foot long and 3-mile, 10-foot wide hole in the port side of the ship's aft engine room. It took the ship a total of 30 minutes to sink. 90 crew members perished either inside of the ship or alongside it in the vast waters of the Philippine Sea. For years, the exact location of the wreck remained unknown until the ship was rediscovered on June 22nd of 2022 at a depth of, bear with me, 6,895 meters, 22,621 feet, making it the deepest wreck ever to be identified to date. The wreck was discovered by Victor Vescovo, a Texas businessman who came across the abandoned vessel in his 2-man submarine, The Limiting Factor. After the discovery, Vescovo was quoted describing the battle that ended in the ship's relocation from above to below the ocean, saying, "It was just an extraordinary act of heroism. Those men on both sides were fighting to the death." End quote. Now, prior to that rediscovery of the USS Samuel B. Roberts, the deepest known shipwreck ever found in the ocean was none other than the USS Johnston, which sank during the Battle of Samar after Japanese battleship Yamato fired armor-piercing ammunition at the ship on October 25th of 1944. After the sustained and intense damage, the USS Johnston began to split apart, and eventually the entire thing was dragged down to the depths of Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. The location of the wreck remained unknown for about 77 years until it was eventually rediscovered on March 31st of 2021 at a depth of 21,180 feet or 6,460 meters. For a while, it remained the deepest wreck ever discovered by man, of course, until the more recent discovery of the USS Samuel B. Roberts in 2022, which out-depthed, if that's a word, the USS Johnston by 1,441 feet, approximately 439 meters. The SS American Star, originally named the SS America, was built in 1936 by the United States Line. For the next 23 years, the vessel served as one of the fastest passenger ships on the ocean. During the Second World War, the ship was used as a Navy vessel and was renamed the USS West Point. In 1946, it once again became a passenger ship until it was sold in 1964 to the Chandris Group, which renamed it Australis. In 1978, the vessel was sold to Venture Cruises, which renamed the ship America, but later that year it was seized by the United States and sold at auction, repurchased again by the Chandris Group, who refitted the ship and renamed it to Italis. However, 2 years later, in 1980, it was sold to Intercommerce Corporation, who renamed the vessel SS Noga and began renovating it to become a prison ship. However, shortly Shortly after renovations began, it was sold to Silver Moon Ferries and renamed, yet again, Alfordos. Eventually, the ship began experiencing mechanical problems and it was sold for scrapping, but in 1993, the ship was saved from scrapping by a company with plans to refit the ship into the hotel. It was then given its final name, the American Star, and it was towed to Trinidad for renovation. Except it never made it to Trinidad because a thunderstorm and low tides caused the vessel to run aground and break in two. Talk about a rough go. For many years, the American Star was a go-to spot for divers, but by 2008, the tides had reduced it to nothing more than an unrecognizable pile of steel, and today, nothing more remains than a few broken pieces. The Edmund Fitzgerald took its maiden voyage on the Great Lakes back in June of 1958, and it spent the next 17 years working hard to become one of the most powerful freight carriers in the area. On November 9th of 1975, the vessel departed from Superior, Wisconsin, and attempted to make its way over to Zug Island on the Detroit River while carrying 26,000 tons of taconite pellets. It never made it. The following day, winds of up to 60 miles per hour and waves up to 10 feet, 3 meters high, surrounded the ship. This is when the Edmund Fitzgerald reached out to its convoy partner, the SS Arthurs Anderson, with a distress call. The radio person on the Fitzgerald was heard saying, "Don't let anybody on deck," and that they had lost both of their radars and were taking heavy seas over the deck. In the end, the Fitzgerald went down, taking all 29 crew members with it. The wreck was discovered not long after, on November 14th of 1975 by the US Navy using a remotely operated vehicle, who confirmed that the vessel had in fact broken right into two, and it was now lying at the bottom of the lake with its cargo scattered all around it. The first man to visit the wreck was Jean-Michel Cousteau in the 1980s in a submarine. Many expeditions followed, one of which was able to locate the remains of one of the ship's former crewmen. In the 2000s, in an effort to protect the site from looters, both the US and Canada decided to declare the wreck an archaeological site. So unfortunately, if you want to visit, you're gonna have to plan ahead and get yourself a permit first. Alright, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this list. All of these ships seem to be cursed, in my opinion. Any ship that goes down does, really. Makes you kind of scared of going on the water. But I love boating. See you next time.